My name's Marshall Ruegger. I'm a member of the ARC, and I was born in Hayward, Wisconsin. My dad was the forest ranger at Hayward at that time, and he was in the process of building the ranger station in winter, and so therefore, about the time my sister was born in 1939, we moved into the winter ranger station and lived upstairs. Dad didn't like living in the ranger station, so he built a house, but he did it dumb. He built right next to the ranger station, and every time somebody wanted a burning permit or a hunting license, they would come through the fence and come to our house, and we would be issuing burning permits or hunting licenses. Anyway, in the 60s, I went to school at Stevens Point, and I ended up getting a forestry degree through night school because they didn't have a forestry degree at that time. So in 62, then I was hired by Mr. LeMay and Mr. Maharg, and I went to Mercer as a dispatcher trainee. I was there for 3 years, and one of those years I was in Conover because I remodeled the house that was attached to the ranger station in Conover for the Ostrowskis who were coming in to take over that ranger station. At the end of that time, I went to the Dells because the Polinick, who was the ranger there, had gotten sick. And they had 9 peat fires going, and I ended up running those 9 peat fires for about a month and a half to 2 months. And then when I got back to Mercer, Mr. LeMay called one day and he says, I think you should probably put in an application to go to Ladysmith. And I said, yeah, okay. And at that time I made up my mind, I'm not going to Ladysmith. Well, about 3 days later I got another call, and so I called my dad and I said, what do you think I should do? And he says, well, I think if Mr. LeMay wants you to go to Ladysmith, you better go. So I says, well, I don't want to be your neighbor and work for the same boss. But he said, we'll try it. So I did. I went to Ladysmith. While I was there, I met my wife, Pat, and we were married. And about 3 years or 4 years after that, I took the exam for area ranger at Dodgeville, and I went to Dodgeville. I was there about 8 years, and I took another exam, and I ended up as an assistant to this state chief forest ranger, Mr. Lamphere. And he told me, he said, you have to move when you take this job. And I says, well, I enjoy riding the van all the way from Dodgeville. No, he said, I told you had to move. So I did. I moved to Mount Horeb, and that's how I ended up in Mount Horeb. My girls were in high school at that time, and so they stayed here when I retired at the end of 1992. And we then went north. My dad had passed, and my mother, I had promised my mother I would take care of her. So we transferred to Park Falls, And I was there, if I remember right, 3 years. And then I finally retired and moved to Ojibwa to be closer to her. And we stayed there for 25 years. One day, the 2 girls that were left here in Mount Horeb showed up at our house, and they said, Mom and Dad, you're moving to Mount Horeb. So we moved to Mount Horeb. I got down here, and we just, we rented for a while, and I didn't like the guy we were renting from, so we bought a house, and we've been here for 12 years now. While I was here, the guys from the Legion came, and they said, we think you should join the Legion. We need members. So I joined the Legion, and I also joined the VFW because they came too. And so as a result of that, they got talking about the history at the museum, or at the Legion, and they wanted to know a little bit about the history of the auxiliary, because the auxiliary was inactive and it is still inactive, and they didn't have anything written down on it. So I went over to the historium, and I went to work over there trying to find all the records out of the Legion Auxiliary. One day while I was working up there, my oldest daughter, Rebecca, came and she said, Dad, I was doing some refinishing in my house, and I found a piece of lumber with the address written on the back of it for the builders that built my house. She said, do you think you could do a history on it? And I said, yeah, I think we could. And so the curator and I sat down and we decided how we were going to do this. And what we did is we went into the tax books, and we went back in 5-year intervals, working backwards from today to the time the house was built. And it ended up that her house had been built in 1911. And we found all of the paperwork that went with that, from the deeds and the tax records and that stuff, and we worked on that until we got that history done on that house. There was about 22 deeds that went with that house, loans and things like that, and I found all of them, and I went down to the county treasurer's office, and we made copies of everything that was there. So while I was working on that, we were talking about we could do another house or two in town. And so I started working on another house, and then pretty soon I was working on another addition to the village, and then I was working on 2 or 3 additions to the village, and pretty soon we had done the entire village, and we ended up doing 338 homes here in the village. We did a history on them so that we know who owned those houses back to the time that they were either built or back to 1899 when the village started. At the end of the 1899, there's no record because there was no village. It was part of the township of Blue Mounds, which is one of the older townships in the state of Wisconsin. So I went out to the town board of the town of Blue Mounds. Town chairman happened to be my old neighbor from when I lived here before. And I said to Dennis, I said, I would really like to work on the histories of these old farms in this township. And he says, well, we need a place to store our books too. So between the historium and the township and myself, we have taken those books and we cleaned them up and we vacuumed them up. You can imagine how much dust and stuff was in them. And we have got them into a condition now where we can put them into acid-free boxes, and we're going to store them at the historium. So that brings us pretty much up to date. And we're back to 1850 on that township. And since I've gotten that, I've taken all those tax records and I've scanned them. And I've scanned about approximately 31,471 pages. We're in the research room at the historium where I work, and these are the tax assessment rolls for the town of Blue Mounds, which the village of Mount Horeb is part of. And these books run from 1850 all the way to the 1990s. As you can see, they get bigger and thicker. This one happens to be the year of 1879, and it isn't anything special, but you can see that it's all handwritten. The owner is there. The description of the property is there. There's a page for each section, and it tells the value, and it tells also the value of the improvements and stuff, and how much the tax is, and who paid the taxes, if they are paid. When we get into, it's one of the interesting things that I saw was when we got to the end of the war, World War II, in 1946, 47, this book is, the books got much bigger. And they, 2 pages, and they had all kinds of stuff on them. Let's see if I can find a page here. It's got a lot of owners on it. There, several owners. And the thing that I found in doing these books is that at the end of the war, the book got bigger, the pages got thicker, and we also ended up with a book that I had to do each page separate because our machine wouldn't go any bigger. And The book ended up weighing 9 pounds, and I had to slide that through a scanner. It took a lot of effort, and it took a lot of time. This is where I scanned the books, and each book is a year, and there was a book for each year from 1850 to 1983 when the county started to scan books themselves. So to do that, there was at least 200 pages in most of them, because you did the personal property and the land and the improvements together for each year. And what I would do is a scanner can do 1 page at a time. All right. You get your book centered on the screen, then you take the picture. See that red line when it came on there? That meant the picture's done. You go to the next page and you do that again. And then you come back and you make sure you're centered and take another picture and take another picture. And ended up I did 31,470 pages, I think, about. It's an estimate, but it was a fun project. In here on house histories that I've done, and this all got started one day when my daughter came in and she wanted to know how to do the history of her house. And so I said, well, I'll do a history of your house if you want me to, Rebecca. And so what we did is we made a form and we went to the outlots, like hers is 52 here, and we then started on page 1, and that was today, and we worked backwards. So at the top of the page you got this year 1925, and then the next year time that you did it would be in 1920, and you can see the same owner owned that from 1907 to 1925, and probably somewhat farther than that. See, men is men, and up till 1941. And I found that I did hers in 45 first, I did Deserud's, and then in 40, I did Margaret Min's, and then I had to go find the 4 books in between 40 and 45, and then I picked out that in 1943, a guy by the name of Lawrence Keller bought this, and he lost it because something happened during the war, and in 1943, then Deserud got the thing. So I had to do 2 lines on that 1 5-year period because there was 2 different owners in between. And I did that for 338 or 337 houses, because I think I did one twice. I really do. 52.
Hi, my name is Destiny Udelhoven. I'm the director of the Mount Horeb Area Historical Society here in downtown Mount Horeb. We have been in existence since 1975, always been a nonprofit. We rely heavily on volunteers. The only way that we could keep going is with them. We have a 3-building museum with several stories, and we only have 1.75 staff. Everyone assumes that we have more staff, and it's because we have great volunteers who keep us going. We probably have between 50 and 60 volunteers at any one time, some of them serving as little as a couple hours a month. Some who come in every day, like Marshall. In fact, Marshall makes me look bad. He's usually here before I get here in the morning, and I have to come in and he greets me. So when you have volunteers that are here more than you, it makes you a little bit antsy sometimes. I don't think he's going for my job, but I wonder. Marshall does lots of scanning for us, which is a very tedious job that a lot of volunteers won't do. So we really appreciate his time. And the end result, what we have is a record of documents that exist nowhere else, that now we will live forever, in theory. So he scans these big, bulky tax rolls, which have records of and information about properties and people who lived there and what they owned through time. So you can follow a house, in theory, from when it was built to today, which we have a lot of requests for. So the work he's doing will live on, like I said, in theory, forever. Those books now that are old, heavy, decaying, they can go away when we need them to because we have the information. And that's because of people like Marshall.